Want to better understand yourself, others, and the best path for your life? Welcome to Authentic Living, podcast for a better life. The podcast where we delve into life themes and how learning who you authentically are can change your entire life. Here are your hosts, John Boris and Kim Ely.
Hi. So welcome back to another episode of Authentic Living, the podcast for a better life. And you're with me, your co-host, Kim Ely, and also with co-host John Boris.
Hello.
Hello. And you know what? Manifesting is one of those concepts that gets talked about a lot. Would you agree is often misunderstood?
Oh, absolutely. And also quite often it's taken into a totally esoteric realm and really can be a blockage for a lot of people. They want something a little bit more empirical, a little more scientific. So yeah, that really does create a lot of problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. Maybe, I don't know, would it be good to talk about what manifesting isn't?
Well, what it isn't is, no, you're not going to control the world and just randomly decide I want $1 million and get it. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. That's a lot of people believe that because there's a lot of gurus out there telling you that, and they'll have anecdote examples of where that happened and they made money, but we're not looking into their background and who they are because it's a holistic events. It's not linear, not necessarily a causal relationship, is what I'm saying. Yeah, but on the other hand, if you look at it from a humanistic point of view, manifesting your future is very real.
Got it. So if you don't mind, let's put it in simple terms. So if I were to say, John, I'm going to manifest a yacht. Give me a yacht, universe.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, right?
No.
It's not like putting in an order for the universe, like, dear universe, one
No.
yacht, please.
No,
Okay.
It doesn't work that way. And the other way it doesn't work is, just by thinking of something, it'll come true. Which is another aspect that's been around for the last 10 years. It doesn't work that way either.
Right.
But there is a way it does work. And that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Awesome.
From an authentic position.
Yes.
So just imagine, we'll start off with, you're in Times Square and it's Christmas time.
Those are snowflakes.
Snowflake.
If you can't see me.
All right. And so imagine there's a 9-year-old boy and he's with his mother and he's looking around the storefronts looking for toys. Then, maybe half a block away, there's a cop looking for a drug sale.
Okay.
There's also a wife who's waiting for the husband to have lunch. And there is the drug pusher who's looking for his connection.
Okay.
Okay. So now that's really where their sense of awareness lies. It's a domain and it captures certain events. It's mingling the mind with physical reality in the sense of awareness. Do you think they would be aware when the billboard that displayed Cats, the opera, and when it would play?
Probably not.
Oh. And would they know the month that Matilda, the play, ended? Another billboard, right? So you see what happens is maybe on an unconscious level, it's picked up, but on a subconscious level, it's not. It's right subconscious right below the conscious. So what happens is our awareness starts the process of our authenticity in action.
Okay.
Okay. So just as there's the boy, cop, and wife and the drug pusher, you have the love, justice, wisdom, and power. So these are our points of awareness. So what we do is, if we're a love person, we'll always approach the world from a position of compassion and looking for wellness and spirituality, etc. And from a wisdom point of view, which is myself, I'll look for what do I don't know, what should be known, and what can I know, what bookstore is available, right?
Right.
So that's how that awareness shows up. Then awareness is beyond language.
Okay.
You're just aware. It's just a state.
Right.
And so this awareness is full of other states called the archetypes. What Jung talked about, like archetype, for example, is think about the notion of jealousy. I know jealousy compared to peace. We just kind of know it. Well, why do we know it? Well, these are the archetypes we were given. Just to know the separation, we know the difference between being alone and being happy. We know that
Right.
the definition of each one is different. And why? Because these are the archetypes that we were born with. In fact, Jean Piaget started or discussed the genetic epistemology, which is that what we know and why we know it began with our genetic makeup, along with our genetic logic.
Absolutely. So, question about that. So, I think just to kind of break down what you're saying, it's not like jealousy and contentment exist because we have the words for them. Quite the opposite. We already had the experience of being in the state of jealousy, being in a state of anger, being in a state of contentment. And then we try to create words to describe or label that state. Is that correct?
That's very true. And it even goes a bit better is children. When you watch children, 3 years old, 4 years old, before language starts.
Right.
Okay? If you take their doll away, they're angry. Well, why? They haven't learned anything.
Right.
But they already know what's fair and what's not fair.
Okay.
Okay. They don't know the concept. They feel this is mine.
And that's something that's an awareness. That is not, like you're saying, that wasn't taught to them. That wasn't anything like that. Okay, gotcha.
That's the point. This is what Jean Piaget meant, is that we're born with a genetic composition enables us to establish logic, and also it lays the foundation for what we're about to learn. And we have to have these archetypes in order to do it. So then we start with what you just said. Everything you said is absolutely correct. But I just want to point out that it starts very young. And in fact, the medical industry has shown that in utero, we show traits of personality.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating. I know I've had friends who were pregnant, and we've been able to do things like once the fetus is a certain size, you can tap on the side of the mother's stomach and the baby will tap back.
Right.
That's fascinating. Oh my gosh.
So the point is, this is where it begins. And this is where your authenticity is, the potential for it is born right there. And so what happens is the authentic self, it starts to manifest itself in time. And it does so through what you value, and your great beliefs, etc., from this point of view, from this beginning. And so that is where your power lies. Your power lies in the love domain.
Wow.
And and your awareness is where your power is. And so you must always be in touch with your authentic identity, because when you do, synchronicity shows up. Now, what that means is the archetype is not only belonging to you and me, but there's what Jung called the collective unconscious. And so that means that in all the worlds, we understand fairness.
Right.
We don't have a different definition, but we understand what fairness is. And we know what we need to know, power, in wisdom, and then there's power. And we know that this is essential for humanity to survive.
Right.
World basis.
Right. So that's the collective.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is part of what could be called the cosmic consciousness.
That's awesome.
As an
The
archetype.
silly part of me wants to go cosmic, man. So cosmic consciousness, meaning again, the collective, is that
Collective.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Gotcha.
I'm using these terms just to make it more palatable. The
Absolutely.
though, is when you are tapping into a micro version of that cosmic consciousness, then you can manifest in both arenas, the physical and the mental. So for example, let's see, I have this happen to me quite often. I'll go into a bookstore and I'll be compelled to buy a book. I don't know why. I'm not into this topic right now. It makes no sense. But I have to buy it. I really don't get it. 4 months later, someone asked me about that very same topic. And I have the book.
Oh.
I don't know why. I've also had this discussed with many, many clients over time, is when they are tapping into their authentic identity, what happens is that the power is both, in a sense, cosmic and personal to you. And you're tapping into both at the same time.
Interesting.
And when you don't tap in
Mhm.
and you are being disloyal to your authentic or being misguided away from it, then these things don't show up.
Fascinating. Okay. So to wrap my hands around it or my brain around it, in essence, to go back to your example, you were attracted to or felt you needed that book, not because you had any specific need at that point in time,
Mhm.
but because, let's say, maybe it resonated with you, something in you was like, I got to get this book.
Right. It was there, but it was beneath the language. I couldn't speak it.
Right. It wasn't like, oh, hot dang, I got a paper I got to do on, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was a subject that maybe you hadn't even been recently thinking about,
Mhm.
but you see the book and you're like, I really need to get this. And then later on, you find that you do in fact need that information.
Right.
What has been manifested in that example?
Well, in that specific one, it was, as I said, a client asked me a question that had to do with history. And I had that book and I was able to give him the answers he was looking for. Had I not bought that book, it wouldn't have happened. So what synchronicity is it's a connection between the personal psyche
Mhm.
and the material world.
Oh, okay.
And that the psyche and the material world are both energy forms. And because they're both energy, they can be intermingled if you are involved with your authentic identity, is where your power is.
Gotcha.
And what happens is what's called a word isomorphism.
Mhm.
What that means is that our minds and brains are designed to interpret the world.
Hmm.
And the world is designed in a way that is able to be interpreted.
Huh.
So there's already a connection between the micro and the macro.
So question for you.
Yeah.
To go back to your example about Times Square, and we've got the little boy, his mom, the cop, and the criminal, right?
Mhm.
Their brains, or they're designed to interpret their world around them, right? So
Yeah.
let's say the criminal is especially attuned to patterns where he or she could get away with something. Oh, if somebody turns their back, I'll be able to shoplift this thing.
Right.
The little boy who loves toys may be especially attuned to that. If we go in that store, there's toys everywhere.
Right.
I'm trying to think of it. Is that an example of isomorphism where we're using patterns?
That's interesting because the psyche and the material world are in isomorphic relationship, period. Now, the
Okay.
question is what are we aware of?
Okay.
So another example is I went to Folsom, a little town up here in Sacramento.
Mhm.
And I'm walking with my wife, but my face, my direction is away from the buildings, and we're talking. And my daughter calls and says, "By the way, what are you doing? Where are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in here in Folsom downtown, lots of little shops." And she says, "I love incense. Could you get me some sticks of incense?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Well, sure. And what type of scent would you like? It doesn't matter. Sandalwood's fine." I said, "Okay." So when we got done, I turned, and there it was.
Oh, bizarre.
There was the very store, and And it was amazing. I mean, this chills went up my back. I mean, it's right there.
That's really wild.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by having the two together, how isomorphic relationships work, but by tapping into, if people tapped into their authentic identity, which is where their power is, they find this happens more often. It's where the universe and the universe of matter and mind, your mind, are in isomorphic relationship in a very particular way, and things show up and you are manifesting. But you are manifesting not because you're conscious of it.
Ah, okay.
It's an unconscious or subconscious manifestation.
Gotcha.
Now, sometimes we can speak it and it can come true well,
Mhm.
but we speak a lot of wishes and desires that don't come true at all. And so that's just really important to see, is that manifestation does occur when you are tapping into your authentic identity, and there is a relationship between matter and the psyche. And that one other real easy example is psychosomatic medicine.
What is that?
Psychosomatic medicine. Well, believe it or not, when you're under tension, and which is just a mental state, you have back problems, you have muscle problems. And actually, the body's designed to deprive oxygen to certain parts of the body to really cause pain. So your mind can be taken off that issue that you're dealing with.
Oh, wild.
That's at least the studies that I've read. That's why people have muscle problems in their wrists from typing all the time at work. But why is it some do and some don't? Yeah.
That's wild. Oh my goodness. All
Yeah.
right. I think let's take a real quick break and
Sure.
then pick back up on this. But this is fascinating. So, listeners, stay with us. There is more to come.
After a quick break, John and Kim will be back with more of Authentic Living, podcast for a better life.
Do you start projects feeling on fire and later on find yourself getting burned out? If so, you are not alone. A recent poll showed that more than 7,500 full-time employees experience burnout. 23% of those workers said that they felt burned out more often than not. I want you to know it is normal to feel burnt out. Cut yourself some slack. In Keeping Your Spark, I empower your project or team members with 5 surprising ways to keep their spark going, even if they currently feel like a burnt ember. Contact me at kwe@kwepub.com or at 804-536-1972 to book me and reignite your spark.
Welcome back to Authentic Living, podcast for a better life. Here's John Boris and Kim Ely.
All right. Thanks for taking a quick break and sticking with us here at Authentic Living, the podcast for a better life. And John, it's so fascinating what we've been talking about with manifestations. Let's dig more into that.
Oh, absolutely. The connection between the mind and matter, what fascinated Carl Jung, and he made a deep dive into the I Ching. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. I candidly don't know what it is.
Well, it's a form of divination where you take coins and toss them, and you watch how they fall, and they'll be heads or tails. And what they do is they designate lines, either broken or whole, and each one 6 lines, 6 times, and that becomes a hexagram. And that hexagram is interpreted in the book of I Ching. So by going through that process, you're asking questions, and then you find the answer through these lines. What's interesting is there really should be no correlation.
Right.
Your life and these and tossing of coins, right?
Right.
But there is. And that's what was fascinated him. And I know I've had the experience, I've had tarot readings by many people, but I didn't think much of it until one day I was in Berkeley and I saw this young man. He was doing tarot readings and he was blind.
What?
And his tarot cards was in Braille.
I was wondering.
Yeah, but the point is he couldn't take any cues from seeing me.
Ah,
Okay?
right.
So he totally blind. He was fantastic. He
Wow.
was really good.
Yeah.
Which what all that means is that the back to the isomorphic relationship between the mind and matter. Why
Mhm.
what this matter, these cards, why would these cards show up in a certain way? And he can
Mhm.
interpret it in this way, and it would compare to what's going on in my mind or experience
Wow.
or beliefs
Yeah.
and back and forth. Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you're saying, tell me if I'm wrong, but you're saying basically it's like predicting a coin flip, whether it's going to be heads or tails. And instead of it just being random, there's some sort of a pattern to it.
Well, there must be, because
Okay.
at least in this tradition of the I
Mhm.
Ching. And so you take a coin and it's heads, and let's say that's a solid line. I haven't done it in a long time. It's a solid line. Tails is a broken line, and then you line them up, and you have the answers. And so,
Ah, okay.
well, I've done it many times, and it's more accurate than anything I've been engaged with. Let's put it that way. They're not going to be exact interpretations, but they'll be very close. Anyway, so the point is that there is some correlation between the two.
Right.
The most odd one I had was my mother had passed, and I was a few months earlier, and I was at a coffee shop.
Mhm.
And so I'm having coffee. I was outside, and I was just thinking about, I wonder what it's like on the other side, and wonder what she's
Yeah.
doing, and I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if she's still around, I just a little curious. So in that moment, I'm in my chair outside, and there's the street, and I see both sides of the street, but
Mhm.
coming my way is a homeless woman. I could tell she's got a cart
Mhm.
and bundles of stuff on it. And I don't pay much attention to it until she came about 30 feet.
Mhm.
And everything was filthy. But one thing, it was a sweatshirt. And it was about St. Jean's Winery. Her nickname was Jean.
Oh my gosh. That's wild.
I mean, that still hits me today.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I mean,
That's
chance could not be there, beyond chance.
Right.
There is
Right.
normal chance, so we understand that. But when it gets that far out, there's something else involved.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating.
So when it comes to manifesting, it's really your authentic identity is trying to manifest for you. And it's doing it, and it's saying, just listen to me. There are many books on that. Listen to your
Mhm.
inner self. And because
Mhm.
that's where your authentic is. If you do, then it really knows what you need. You need, not what you think you need,
Right. Right.
but what you really need. And that's how that manifests itself.
So that makes me think of something, because I know I've read many books about, there's one by a lady named Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back. And the premise of it is that doors will open for you, that basically if you, and I'm going to say and I think it must be, if you are living your truth. I think that expression gets used too much, but being your authentic self,
Right.
that's when, quote unquote, doors and windows will open for you. Is that
Exactly.
accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Gotcha.
that's what I mean by manifesting. And
Got it.
I can't control the world, but I don't want to. That's not the issue. The issue
Right.
is my authentic identity is trying to manifest for me what I need, as long as I
Right.
listen to it and I'm in connection with it. So, give you another example, is how things show up in the opposite direction. I had a delicatessen one time. I did a very good job. I made good living, and people around me would consider me successful, but I was miserable.
Mm.
Absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
And I had nothing to look forward to. I had
Mm.
nothing to be excited about. It was just a job. And I did that for about 5 years, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And in that 5 years, I never had any epiphanies, synchronistic moments. There was no great manifestation of anything.
Wow.
It was only until I sold that, and I did go to door-to-door sales, as you know, but I always kept philosophy books with me. And I
Right.
was always reading, and epiphanies started showing up again.
Gotcha.
But the point is everybody, all the people who listen to this needs to keep a journal. And when you have a journal of things happening, you will pick up on it. You will see a pattern. I guarantee it. I promise you, you will find a pattern.
Interesting.
But you got to write it down.
Tell us more with the journal. What might go into it? Would it just be somebody recording their daily life? Would it be recording what what resonates with them? What would they be recording? What do they write?
Write down issues that something that happened they didn't like and something happened they did like.
Okay.
That's one.
Okay.
Second is write down any epiphanies that they had.
Okay. Gotcha.
And synchronistic moments.
Awesome.
You will find a pattern. Yeah.
Gotcha. I've also heard, and I frequently will use the expression, because there's a wonderful book called God Winks, and it has to do with things that are so coincidental they can't possibly be a coincidence.
Exactly. That's what, yes.
It just, you know darn well it happened for a reason, that it fits with a pattern. So this is like a God wink. If somebody records that, what they did or didn't like that happened, and then epiphanies, what will they start noticing as they journal?
First of all, when you write down the happy moments, sad moments, angry moments, things like that, you'll find that and it asks, what prompted my sad moment? What prompted my happy moment? What conditions were around anger at that time? And what happens is they'll all be tethered to one source. And that's your authentic identity.
Okay.
These are all signals of
right.
You are in touch or you're not, or someone else is trespassing on your authentic identity or not. So one thing that's very frustrating for me is they'll have courses on anger management. Well, I understand that because some people do take anger too far, but no one has a course on happiness management or joy management, right?
Right.
And so actually, they're all the same. They're all telling you if you are following your authentic identity or not.
If I'm
or
reading
being true to yourself, the same thing.
Right. So if you start noticing the things that continually irritate you or make you angry, is it as simple as do less of those and do more of the things that make you happy?
It's not a do. Good point. It's not
okay.
It's who you're being while you're doing it.
Okay.
What happened? What made me happy? For example, I get books delivered here at the house. So what happens is, I look out the window and I'm looking to see if there's a book out there. And if there is, that's the book I needed. Oh, that's fantastic. I'm happy about it. Then the opposite is when I have to deal with computers and the industry, like a medical industry, trying to make an appointment with a doctor and going through, not only the tree and the branches and going through the leaves. I'm going down the trunk and I'm going down in the ground and I'm talking to gophers. And that takes 3 hours. I've done this. 3 hours of going down these darn things and getting nowhere and having to start over. Oh, and how about getting disconnected in the middle of the conversation after you spent 45 minutes getting them? Oh, I mean, to me, this is really the antithesis of who I am. And I really go crazy.
So let's explore that for a second, because I want to know how is that the antithesis of who you are? So we know that you're a wisdom life theme.
Theoretical wisdom.
Theoretical wisdom. Okay. Oh, okay.
Not a technical wisdom.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I mean, if you took it'd be like having a classroom of computer geeks,
Mhm.
and I'm going to present phenomenology. There's going to be no connection whatsoever. They're going to be squirming in the seats. They don't want any part of it. And I wouldn't
Right.
blame them either.
Right.
Because it wouldn't have any connection to their world of physical results. That's what they deal in every day. This is this theoretical results. And so we have both, but one more than the other. So that would really drive me crazy.
That makes sense, because since you are in theoretical wisdom, the technical is going against the grain for you, because instead of being, let's say, abstract, or it's the actual physical, how do you do this, that kind of thing. Okay, gotcha.
And then there's what drives me really crazy is when you're trying to make an appointment with the doctor and it has a list of all your symptoms. Do you have all these, or one or two? What if I have none of them? I mean, yeah. And then the other one is they can't. A lot of times they just can't answer your question.
Right.
It just this is what it really does drive me crazy. I have to stop in the middle of it and walk away from it.
Gotcha. So as you were in sales, as we've discussed before, I'm thinking that you probably noted a lot of times where you became angry or frustrated, and you noted those. What kind of epiphanies did you have? I'm assuming when you discovered Authentic Systems, that was probably a huge epiphany.
Well, absolutely. But yeah, you brought up something that's very interesting. When you're not expressing your authentic identity and you're doing something totally different, there's no reason to get angry.
Ah, you're just like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're there and you're stuck, when I was in college, I would have a part-time job in a warehouse. I have absolutely no connection with this warehouse. It's a way to make money, and I don't get angry. Unless a boss or someone did something to me personally, but I have no reason to be happy, sad, anger, anything, because I'm not expressing my authentic identity. I'm neutral. I was numb.
Yeah.
I was numb when I ran the delicatessen because my authentic was not being expressed. And that's a very good issue you brought up, is that all these emotional reactions have to do with our internal reality and our internal motivations.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not engaged in our motivation, and we know that we're not going to be engaged in our motivations, then we don't have any emotional attachment.
Oh my gosh, that resonates with me like a bell, because I've told you my story before. I was in IT for many years, and we had layoffs at work. And that, because I love the people I worked with, I wasn't laid off, but most of my team was. I always describe that as, I realized at that moment I was sleepwalking through my life.
Right.
I had become numb, and I had just accepted that it was like, oh, this is just how life is. And then I was like, wait a minute. And that's when I really started investigating and finding out about my authentic and who I really am. So that's so interesting that you mentioned about the numbness, the disconnection. Wow.
Well, thank you for that. So that's a nice story. Validate that sleepwalking. I appreciate that. That's exactly what happens, because your authentic is not in connection with it. And so now then, you probably can't remember, but I doubt there's many synchronistic moments for you.
It is hard to remember, but yeah, I mean, I've had a lot more things. Again, I call them God winks, happen all the time. Like just this morning, I was at coffee with a client, and she asked someone to take our picture together.
Yeah.
And this other woman came from across the coffee shop and said, y'all looked really, just so great in this picture. Who are you? What are you doing? And we described it to her. She goes, I've always wanted to write my book. May I have your card?
Right. Yeah.
Stuff like that happens all the time. It never happened before.
Yeah. It was only about three weeks ago. I needed a pool table, and I needed to put a light above it. And I'm looking for an electrician, and they're hard to find. And some people didn't want to come up in this area. Anyway, so I'm at a gas station, and I'm just looking at this guy, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking. Then I look at his car, and there it was, electrician.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so he gave me the card. I mean, it's just those are really small, and you might start thinking that's so small it might even be coincidence, which is possible. But the problem is that when too many show up, it's not.
That's it. When too many show up, just one coincidence does not maybe make it. When it's just continual pattern, it's like, what? So
yes. And then when you take the pattern of getting back to the journal, pattern of synchronistic moments, and you start putting that with how you felt and what you were doing,
right?
You're going to find that the authentic identity is manifesting for you.
Yeah.
It's automatic. It just happens.
Yeah.
And it's not about you controlling anything. It's not about you wish something. It's not even conscious. It just shows up.
That's amazing.
Some do, some don't. Most of them don't.
Right. Right. Oh, this has been fantastic discussion, John. Oh my gosh. And I think you and I both had a couple of aha moments, I'll call them.
Yeah, I really appreciate your sleepwalking analogy, because that's very true. That when I had that delicatessen, I was sleepwalking.
Yeah. That's very cool. So awesome, listeners. Thank you for joining us again. John, if somebody wants to reach out to you and they want to ask you a question, are you open to that?
Sure.
Awesome. How do they reach you?
John, John, at authentic-systems.com.
Fantastic. And same thing, if they're interested in having an assessment, do they just email you?
Yeah, you can email me, or you can go to authentic-systems.com and find me there, authentic-systems. And
awesome.
You can sign up for an assessment there.
Fantastic.
Now, once you learn what your authentic identity is, then you'll find out what it has been telling you all your life.
Yes.
And you can put it together. That's what people do.
That's so awesome. It's powerful. So fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
This concludes another episode of Authentic Living, podcast for a better life. Thanks for spending time with us. Hope you join us again soon.